Hello, I'm JB,
And I'm Candy.
and welcome to Safe and Seen, where we love talking about relational leadership. And Candy, before we dive in and talk about just dive in on the subject matter we're going to focus on today, I just want to kind of nail down what we mean when we talk about relational leadership. I was thinking about that, and it just what does relations mean? What does relationship mean? That's relating to others,
Mhm.
right? And then I just brought it out all the way down to the basics. What is relating? And when we talk about relationships, relationships are complicated. They're complicated, they're complex, but they're also rewarding and fulfilling. That's the same thing with leadership. They're complex, they're fulfilling,
Mhm.
and we have to be intentional. And so when we talk about relational leadership, it's about creating relations. And what does that mean? Well, connection,
Mhm.
connecting with people, connecting ideas. And so that's the basics of what we're talking about when we talk about relational leadership. So, as a leader, we want you to think about that when you listen to this podcast. What does it mean for you as a leader to have a relate to lead relationally? Are you making a meaningful connection with the people you lead? Because that's what it boils down to. How we connect with the people in our organizations, how we connect with the people that we're leading, and how they connect with the people that they're leading. That's what it all comes down to. Are we creating those connections, those bonds that will allow us to then lead effortlessly? So I really just wanted to spend a little time talking about that and dialing down what it means to lead relationally. And
Yeah,
how would you like
love
to
that.
add to it?
I love that because I do think, we talk about relational leadership and we talk about relationships being the new currency, though I always think it was a currency. We just weren't putting enough focus and energy
Right.
on it. But the thing is, we talk about business isn't personal. Business isn't, and I would argue that business is extremely personal.
Mhm.
And it really does start in the way that we connect and we communicate and we share space and hold space with others, whether it be your team, whether it be those under your leadership, whether it be your clients. It's really about how we bring that humanness into the way that we are showing up and serving. And so leadership is nothing more than, am I putting my gifts in service to others, and am I allowing others to share theirs with them, share their gifts with me in a way that I can receive that? And the only way we can do that is in relationship with each other.
Right.
We are human beings wired for connection. We are human beings that, as we engage in anything, our lifeblood comes from how we relate and how we connect to each
Mhm.
other. And so if you are not fundamentally looking at your own leadership and the way that you're building your organization from a place of, relationships have to be the first priority, relationships have to be the place that everything else is built on. You don't have a product without human capital. You don't have a business without people to deliver the services. You don't have a business without clients.
Yeah.
All of that is steeped in the energetics and the mechanics of the way that we relate to each other, the way that we come into community together, the way that we offer value in exchange for
Right.
resources. Fundamentally, that all starts in our relationships. And so when we talk about relationship leadership being relational, it has to start from that very fundamental space,
Yes.
because otherwise we get sideways very fast.
Right.
But it's interesting because I'll hear a lot of leaders sometimes say, "Oh, I'm a people first culture," and then in the next breath they talk about their OP or their bottom line. I'm like, "You're
Right.
not a people first culture."
Right.
Because if your next words or your next breath is my OP or my bottom line, you're not about investing in the human capital itself
Mhm.
and the relational ties that are the heartbeat and the engine of what your organization represents.
Yeah.
It's the culture, it's the values, it's the grounding and foundation, but it is the actual heartbeat that creates long-term sustainability and allows how you serve to endure as times change, as there's transformations, and it always comes back to the people.
Always comes back to the people. And I love how you said that. And also, a key thing that Candy said that I want to make sure that you don't miss is as humans, we're built for connection. And one of the reasons why Candy and I love doing this and love working with leaders, which we've done for over 35 plus combined years, is because we understand how difficult it is. We understand how complex it is, but we also know how rewarding it and fulfilling it is to be a leader and to have successful relationships. And we want you as leaders to have successful relationships, connections with the people in your organization. So this is one of the reasons why Candy and I, we love doing this. And we're going to dive in and talk a little bit about what that looks like because Candy, you hit on something. You talked a lot about the human connection. And I know from your framework and what you talk about a lot and what you work with, and I know that personally, is the human design and leadership by design. So first of all, I'll tell our audience a little bit more about what that entails, human design and leadership by design.
Yeah, so I love that question for a couple of reasons. One, if fundamentally we are wired for connection, we also need to understand that we each have our own innate wiring that sets us apart in how we show up and how we lead. And so we have an energetic blueprint that is like an operating system. So if you think about it for a minute, say you're a gas car, I'm an electric car. What we need to perform at optimal level is very different. You need premium gas. I need to be plugged into a charger, right? So we use that kind of analogy that we all have a similar blueprint or operating system that says this is what I need to show up in the fullness of the gifts that I'm here to offer. Okay. And so it maps out those unique gifts. It maps out that circuitry. So I always like to look at human design as being kind of an individual circuit board that shows you how you use energy and how you bring energy into any space. And so human design fundamentally does it basically shows us how we tap into energy. Yeah. And so it's energy that either we have 24/7 access to, that we're broadcasting, we're bringing into the spaces. Right. And then there's areas in our chart where we're actually drawing that energy in, but we amplify that energy. Okay. And so it's like a circuit board. Are your circuits moving in the right direction? Or are they getting jammed up and fried? And so when you recognize that each of us carries our own blueprint, we carry coding for all of the how we do things. And so oftentimes people talk about human design, they're like, oh, it's who you are, it's what you are. And I would offer that's not true. Okay. Human design is how you are. So it's how you make decisions that are aligned for you. It's how you nourish and take care of your body. It's how you engage and how your relationships are meant to work in balance and harmony. It's how you come into agreements. It's how that when I can look at, say, my circuit board that says, this is how I'm here to lead. Right. Because we have very specific markers that map the how we lead. And then I look at your energetic blueprint and I go, and this is how JB's here to lead. We start to build an ecosystem that allows us to bring our gifts in full expression to the table and put them in service. Yes. In a way that creates harmony instead of extra friction. Yeah. And so if you've ever been on a team, for example, and the more people you have, the more dynamics are at play. So when there's two people, we have just kind of our dynamics together. But when you get three or more, we get what's called a penta. And there's this whole underlying energy and mechanics that are outside of the individuals themselves. There's something else created that you'll be like, hey, John left the team. Why does it feel so good when Barbara came on? It's because the tension points change. And so what happens is when you understand, we all carry a coding, we all carry a blueprint, we all carry our own individual operating system. That when I can understand, first of all, mine, because as a leader, I need to understand my energetic blueprint first. And then I can recognize and understand your energetic blueprint. We can see where some of those natural tension points live just in the way our energy comes together. Right. And it can allow us to make agreements differently. It can allow us to organize the team in a way that a rising tide lifts all boats kind of example. And it allows us to then be mindful and I'll give you an example. Say somebody's got a defined route like me and somebody's got an undefined route. I know that the person with the undefined route is under pressure all the time with a nonstop to-do list that they feel like never ends. They have a hard time being on time. They can amplify this pressure and they can get really like anxious about things. I have a really defined route that when I'm in that same space with someone, it actually amplifies that energy for them because I'm like, I'm good and I'll get things in the 11th hour. But that can be a natural tension point because I show up, I'm like 15 minutes early to things just because it's how I naturally run.
Right.
They're always late. You can see where there could be arguments around this versus they're designed in a different way than I am. And so how do we create a balance there? So I'm not like, dude, why aren't you keeping up? Let's get going.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh my God, you're putting all this pressure on me, which I'm not, but they're feeling it because my energy is so big.
Yeah.
You start to recognize, oh, I can understand where they're coming from. I can offer some more grace.
Yeah.
They can realize, oh, that's important to her. I can show up differently. And we start having the tools that we need to meet each other in a way that allows us to lead more succinctly, lead from a place that feels aligned, and hence the leadership by design and the ecosystem that I've created.
Well, every time I hear you talk about this, I get goosebumps. And it's funny. I mean, and you may be, well, why does he get goosebumps? Because for me, it was so important to understand the how. How I'm wired helps me understand how I show up. Okay. And so as a leader, that's important because when you understand how you're wired, how you're designed, and then you start to understand how your team members are wired and designed. And I love that you nailed it down to it's about the how. Okay. Because when we understand the how, then we can, as you just said, offer grace.
Yeah.
Okay. Instead of having animosity towards someone and having those friction points, we now understand why there's a friction point, and we say, oh, well, I'm wired this way. He's wired that way. How can we now come together instead of saying, well, we can't work together?
Right.
You know?
Well, think about it for a minute. It eliminates the blame game, first of all. We stop over identifying with traits or characteristics, or it's that person. And we start fundamentally looking at there is an energy at play.
Yeah.
There's also an aspect, and there's two things I want to say in what you were just commenting on. One is also the reason I love human design and talking about it's a system for how is because when I define leadership in my body of work, leadership is fundamentally three things. It's fundamentally how we choose to show up. It's fundamentally how we choose to serve others. And this is the big one. It's fundamentally how we choose to take personal responsibility inside that space. So the other piece of what I want to say is, here's what I want you to hear and understand. Human design doesn't create a cop-out. Because I oftentimes, now I have somebody, and so are you, who has a lot of definition. So a lot of the energy, we bring energy into a room.
Right.
We can lift a room or shut it down like that. And our energy can do that before we even speak. We both have an energy that we carry like that.
Right.
That being said, I don't get to sit on my laurels and be like, well, that's my energy. You've got to suck it up. So be it. No, I need to recognize that my energy is big, that my energy can walk in a room and literally lift it up like a congregation or shut it down.
Right.
I have a responsibility then to understand what's the quality of my energy because everything lives on a spectrum. So if I'm in a shitty ass space and I know that coming into a place, I better check myself and get my energy right because I have a responsibility that the quality of the energy I'm bringing in that room is mine. Yeah. On the flip side, if you have what we call a lot of openness in your chart, so you're bringing in a lot of energy and you amplify it, you don't get to play martyr or victim to be like, oh, I absorb everybody's energy. I'm an empath. Great. You need to learn discernment and energetic boundaries. Yeah. So no matter how you look at this, the other thing that I really love is whether it's things like responsibility, whether it's how we're leading, whether it's imposter syndrome, burnout, We all experience it, especially if you're high performing, if you're someone who is stepping up
Right.
and continuing to grow in your leadership. That being said, where it stems from for each of us looks different. And so when you can understand, oh, burnout shows up for me here, or imposter syndrome shows up, or this is when my energy gets too big, I then have the map for what I need to take responsibility.
Right.
So that I am leading myself first, because no matter when, and we've talked about this before, you cannot lead squat if you are not first leading yourself.
Oh, I love that you said that. And you said a couple of things there. One of them was we all have a responsibility. Once we have a responsibility beforehand, but then once we know how we're wired, how our energy is wired, and how we're to show up, we have a responsibility then to hold ourselves accountable and not give ourselves a cop out. I love that you said that. And that's so important for leaders to understand that. And so thank you, first of all, for saying that. But then just talk a little bit more about how important it is to lead yourself, because that's another key thing you said. Being able to lead ourselves. How many leaders actually think about that? That's a question for you. As a leader, how often do you think, how am I leading myself? So let's talk a little bit more about that and how human design can help in that way.
Yeah, so I'm a firm believer, as I said, you're not leading squat if you're not leading yourself.
Right.
And so inside of the Leadership by Design ecosystem, one of the things I talk about is a leadership arc. And the arc being alignment, relationships, and culture. And it really does follow that pathway that says, I need to learn how to lead me.
Yeah.
Before I can move into a space to lead we.
Right.
And then move into a space to lead us. So it's the me, we, us kind of equation, but the alignment of leading yourself. Because otherwise what happens, and this is what we see, and I'm going to use the quotes, the air quotes leadership, the leadership that's happening in the world right now. When people are not stepping into a place of personal responsibility and accountability and owning, am I putting energy out or am I bringing energy in?
Right.
It gets very easy to be in the throw people under the bus, the blame game, the shooting, the whatever it is.
Right.
It's this whole, then it's a they versus me equation. No. One of the things that I also see happen when I work with organizations is I get every executive that wants to bring me in because something's awry on their team. It's a constant, my VP of ops, or this team's not doing this, or they're not, or whatever it is. Yeah. That when I ask the tough questions, they usually have a awareness or wake up that says, oh, you're going to make it. I'm the sacred cow, or I'm the one. And I'm like, I'm going to tell you, in 30 plus years of me doing this work, I've been doing this work for 30 plus years. It has never not been a top-down equation. Right. So if you have something going on in your organization or your culture that feels like it's out of alignment, or you've got those sacred cows, or you've got those elephants squeezing the oxygen out of the room, I guarantee there is an aspect of you not leading yourself that's at play. Because wherever and however you are not leading yourself in your own life, in your own relationships, to come back to relational leadership. Right. That includes your relationships at home, right? Relationships with your children, relationships with your family. They are inadvertently rolling downhill into the culture and environment you're creating within your organization. And we fundamentally need to get our shit right first. Yes. Before we start pointing fingers at other people for not having theirs right as well.
Oh, I love
that. People
that.
cannot feel safe and seen in environments
Yes.
where leaders are not leading themselves first. It is absolutely impossible for people within your organization to feel safe and seen if you are not walking your own talk and living by example and leading yourself first. It is not possible.
It's not possible. And I love that you said that. And that actually ties into our last episode when we talked about my champion code of own the outcome. Okay. And that means taking responsibility for your part. And I just recently had a great example of that. I had a conversation with a leader, and she was telling me about some tension in her organization and some things that basically was going sideways.
Mm-hmm.
And she took a couple of days and she came back and we had another conversation after she had told me about that. And she could have easily blamed.
Mm-hmm.
She could have easily pointed this and easily have pointed fingers to a lot of different things. And I knew she was a good leader.
Mm-hmm.
But when I heard her say this, I know now she's a great leader, because she said, I took a step back and I looked at everything. And I started to ask myself the question, what could I have done differently?
Mm-hmm.
She said, I have been so caught up in the day-to-day that I've not communicated
Mm-hmm.
the direction and purpose of my organization clearly. And so now I look at the confusion going on with my people, and I can only trace it back to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was great for her to have that sort of that self-awareness and to take ownership. That's an example of what you're talking about, leading yourself. She took a moment to lead herself and understand, okay, this is the connection of the disconnect in my people, and that's on me.
Yeah. Well, and the number one thing I found, and I am curious if you've seen this too, the number one thing I find when there is something going on in the culture where it feels like something's just not aligned or right, it's because the leader has not gotten clear about what they actually want and what the expectations are around it.
Yeah.
And so people can't perform because you're not taking that space to say, wait, are we even on the path? Because I watched too many leaders. I had an executive VP once when I was working in corporate, who at some point he's like, you don't act like you're really happy with my answer. I'm like, I want to know why you as an executive VP is even having this conversation. This is 5 levels beneath your pay grade. You got my team chasing their tail, winding something. And I was like, is this what you need? And he's like, oh, and I'm like, maybe instead of having my team run in circles, chasing their tail and wasting my budget, maybe you should have taken that time to understand what it was you were actually asking and realize you could have allocated those resources to train your administrative assistant to do this thing and take care of it.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And he was like, and I said, the fact that I'm sitting at a table with you right now, I shouldn't be having this conversation, let alone you.
Right.
So you're right. I'm not happy because now you've wasted my time to my team's time. And it's all because you weren't even clear on what you were asking.
Oh, and see,
and he was not so happy when I said that. Let me just be clear.
Well, here's the thing.
I'm not going to sit here and have a blame game of somehow my team is responsible for this thing that, first of all, you overpromised.
Right.
But it's that space of you weren't even freaking clear on what you wanted. And now you got everybody chasing their tails. Lead yourself. And leading yourself would mean I would not be sitting in this room having this conversation, period.
And all of that could have been avoided simply by being clear as a leader on the direction, and not just clear, because you can be clear in your head on the direction in which you want to go. But if you're not communicating that clearly to your people, then thus lies the disconnect.
Well,
just what you experience.
It just says leading yourself.
Yes.
Am I actually walking my talk?
Yeah.
Speaking what needs to be spoken. Making sure I'm playing at the level I should be playing at. I remember I had an assistant, and I'll be clear. I'm just going to say, I'm going to call out that leader, but I'm going to call myself out too. I was an assistant director. I had a fantastic assistant. God, I loved him. I wish I could mold him. And anyway, he came in my office one day and I was copying the notes off my whiteboard. And he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm copying the notes off. And he's like, okay, let me rephrase the question. Why are you doing what you're doing? I'm like, and I remember I looked at him, I go, because it's a menial job. It's beneath me, you, whatever. He goes, Candy, I am your assistant. If it is a menial job, what are you not doing right now that requires your attention at your level because you're dinking around with something that's my job?
Right.
I was like, man, I hate when I hire people smarter and more effective, but I love it.
Yes.
But it was that humility of he felt safe enough to hold me accountable to the fact that I was not allowing him to do his job to support me. And I was not doing the thing I should be focused on. So then it was, oh, you're right. I need to lead myself and do differently. And the other example I would give is and I think we've talked about this on another episode. I had a high performing team of consultants who they were traveling all the time. They were kicking ass. They were out there just doing the thing. That there were several times on a Friday where I'm like, okay, you guys have already had 60-hour weeks, enough. Lock up the laptops, go. And it was my boss that said, don't tell your team to lock their laptops up and go home for the weekend if you're not going to do the same.
Yeah.
Because your team respects you too much that they're going to do what they see you do, not what you tell them. And so I would invite them into my office to show I'm not taking the laptop home with me.
Yeah.
I have a key, I'm locking the door. Go have your life and disconnect and come back Monday fresh for chart. But I had to lead myself and show the example.
Yes.
Because my people did respect me so much, and they were not going to hear me say that when they saw me working extra hours and long.
Right.
So are your words matching your actions?
Yeah.
And it's, I think about, we grew up in the era of do as I say, not as I do. That's bullshit.
Yeah,
That's not leadership.
absolutely,
That is
absolutely.
not
Right.
leadership. And I cannot stress how much that still is prevalent in most organizations. Just do as I say, not as I do. That is not how leadership works.
No, it
You
isn't.
get your shit right before you expect others to get there.
Right. And as a leader, is important to understand that people are watching you, and they're going to watch your actions more than they are hearing your words.
1000%.
Okay. And one of the things you said that I really loved, first of all, you gave two really great examples about leading yourself. But one of the things that you said in relation to your assistant, I love this. You're not allowing me to do my job. How many leaders are not allowing their people to do their job, tap into their gifts, utilize their gifts? Okay. So what I want to ask then is, because that's important, to allow other people to do their job. How does human design help leaders and teams allow others to do their job and tap into their genius?
Yeah, it's pretty significant, actually. One of the things that I do when I work in organizations is I do individual human design charts, so that I can see everybody's blueprint. And then I align those blueprints together in a way that shows what strengths are available within the team. And so you can actually see, based on what is defined in someone's chart, when you look at their circuitry, when you look at specific gates or markers in the chart, there are specific gifts. So for example, I have unique and specific things I bring inside of the way I lead teams. When someone understands that about my skill set, I can be then set up for success. Same thing with someone else. You might have somebody who, and I'll even give you an example just on the 5 fundamental types, whether you're a manifestor, generator, manifesting generator, projector, reflector, they work very differently. Manifesting generator, like me, my gift is the fact that I compress cycles of how to get things done.
What do you mean by press cycles?
I compress them, which means I shorten the timeline or the duration it takes to move from A to B.
Okay.
So oftentimes, and I'll miss steps and make mistakes, and there's a whole lot inside of that. I'm not going to go too deep. But what happens is I will miss steps that people need to understand. That's part of my natural learning. And sometimes I have to go back and clean that up.
Right.
But it's in that cleanup that I'm like, wait, why is it taking 20 steps to do this to get to here when we could do it in 6?
Okay.
So I compress those cycles. That's my genius zone. Just as a Manny Gen, that's not even bringing in all the other dynamics. Somebody who's a projector, their genius zone is they can see around the blind spots.
Okay.
So what they can do is they can not only see the potential of somebody who has a consistent way they work, say a generator, but they can also see potential that no one else has so they're more of an oracle, or they're more of a system. So they do really well at systems engineering. They do really well at seeing the whole picture. And when you start to, then you've got somebody that's a reflector that's just basically mirroring back the quality of the environment. Is our culture healthy? Imagine that. Imagine just having somebody on the team that literally is illuminating whether or not the culture and the organization are healthy and where it's not aligned. To have that insight and have somebody that's just in a role to do that. when you start putting those pieces together, and that's just type, that's not even all the other, there's more than 1,000 nuances in your chart.
Right.
When you start to look at, I've got somebody on the team that can do this, I've got somebody on the team that can do this, you can start matching people into positions that feed them, feed their soul, feed the way they're wired. You can help them activate and illuminate the specific and unique gifts that they bring to the table. And you can then create, and this is my biggest pet peeve when I hear leaders tell me they don't have time to do this. You can build individual development plans to help your people grow in their leadership.
Oh,
and I will tell you, when I hear a leader go, "What is the time? Do you have time for the turnover and the revolving door?" Because I guarantee it's costing you more every time you have to recruit, train, not only the people you're bringing on board, but the people you're bringing offline to onboard them. Like we worry so much about recruiting. We don't worry about retention. And when you bring human design into an organization and you understand the energetic foundation of how the team is wired individually and then collectively, you can create roadmaps for the team, and you can create professional or personal development plans, personally and professionally, that then create an environment where people feel deeply seen. They can feel empowered, and they feel safe to grow in the trajectory of their own leadership. And now you're creating a win. I like to call it the 3-part win. I hate the conversation. And we did this, I think, on an earlier episode last year about win-win. I am so not a win. Win-win is an arbitrary, polarizing, what's in it for you? What's in it for me? I'm going to give half. It's that whole game of compromise. That's bullshit. The win-win-win says, what's in it for me, what's in it for you, and what's in it for all that are going to be affected by the decisions that we make. When you bring human design into the conversation and you look at the energetic blueprint of each individual and then the collective culture itself, you truly position yourself for win-win-win.
And
because everybody wins.
And I'm gonna flip that just a bit. The win-win-win. I love that, because we did have that conversation, and the win-win-win when we're talking about, because one of the things you said earlier was a good leader also understands what it means to lead from a servant place. So I'm gonna flip that just a bit. And when you talk about leading from a servant place, the win-win goes like this: what's in it for you? What's in it for me? What's in it for us?
100%.
Right? And so just a little bit of flipping that. What you're talking about in people working in their genius, which is one of the reasons why you and I connected. And we're not going to talk about this today, but I do a lot of work in the working genius. And there's 6 types of working genius. And we're going to talk about how human design and working genius works together, and how we can use that work to help organizations and their teams. And we're not going to talk about that today, but I want you to understand that's one of the key things that brought Candy and I together, because there's such great synergy in how we work together as individuals, but also how we work with corporations and teams, and helping them to really dial down their people and what they do best. But here's what I want to talk about, because we're talking about relational leadership and we're talking about connection. So let's kind of dial in really how the human design that we talked about, and having people really understand what they're good at and working in that, and leaders allowing people to do that. How does that create the connection we're talking about?
So think about it in a couple pieces, and I know we're going to talk about the combination of like human design and working genius. Working genius being an assessment, human design being an energetic blueprint. There is a mapping of, we can see behavior, tendencies, characteristics, which is what the assessment provides. And then there's this is fundamentally how you're wired. So we have things that show up when we're stressed. We have things. The more we can understand that. So I think about where most communications go awry. It is where we make assumptions. It is where we immediately want to project something that our relationships are essentially a mirror. So our relationships, when we are in a relationship with anyone, they are doing a couple of things. They are mirroring back where we've grown. They are mirroring back where we need to grow.
Right.
And they are mirroring back where we're currently at.
Right.
And so when we understand that this person's triggering me right now, oh, I have an opportunity. And oh, I understand my energetic blueprint. And I know some areas where I likely am in what we call the shadow, or I'm in sort of an unhealed space. What's the story I'm telling myself that's creating this trigger? And how do I go back to, there's something I get to assess, sit with, contemplate, take responsibility for in my own way I'm showing up in leadership,
Right.
because this is here to teach me.
Yeah.
And so when you use a tool like human design, and I use it as a strategic operating system, it's the underlying fundamental work, foundation under all of my work. When you can look at something that shows that mapping, it immediately allows you individually to take ownership. It's that responsibility, that ownership, right, to take ownership of what energy you're bringing into the equation, mm-hmm, and then understand what the other person is bringing into the equation and find your common ground. Yeah. And so when we talk about building connection, there are also energies that come together that dictate how we should be in agreement together. Okay. Not everybody's agreements look the same. And I've had people that even in their marriages where I'm like, you might do well based on what I see coming together in your chart, that when you have agreements together as partners, that you actually write them down. Yeah. Because there's too much room in the way you're wired for assumptions. Oh. That if that goes awry, it can be so detrimental to you as a power couple, that you writing it down, you being able to have a way that you can check in with that, you can create rituals and habits and practices, mm-hmm, that allow you a way to measure. And so I'll give another example. I have another podcast I do in a partnership, but I also have a bigger kind of container in Business Blueprint by Design that I build with her as well. We have a monthly check-in just to see, are our agreements intact? Right. Are we having a space? And human design can help you bring a deeper level to connection, because again, our immediate survival knee-jerk reaction is to protect ourselves and blame somebody else. Right. Versus, oh, wait a minute, this is a dynamic that happens. Mm-hmm. We both have some unhealed spaces in, mm-hmm, this, rather than us. So for example, I might have somebody with a defined solar plexus and somebody with an open. Rather than getting sucked into their drama, the best thing we can do before we even engage in a conversation is to get out of each other's energetic field. Right. Then we can come back and have a different conversation. Okay. And so you start to get the tools. Okay. Strategies, mm-hmm, that allow you a way to lead, so that then you can deepen the connections in the relationship. The problem is most of the time we enter into relationships and connections and with this notion of, well, relationships should be easy. It's a bunch of horse shit. Yeah, relationships, real relationships require intention. They, yes, require focus. They require presence. They, yes, require accountability and responsibility. They require effort to say, I see you. I get this is a space where we don't agree, or our energy runs different. But especially if we're going to be in an environment where we're working together, playing together, living together, whatever it might be, we've got to come up with some agreements, because I get, like, I'm a line too. I'm a hermit. That means I need ample space, whether I'm working with somebody, whether I'm in my own home environment. Right. But if I got somebody that's like always making it about that, it's going to create these unnecessary tensions, versus them going, this is your time, you need a hermit. Great. I'm going to the library. I'm going here. I'll give you the space. So you learn how to work inside each other's energy. And I look at it this way: when we take the care, we take the time, we take the intention to understand how someone else is fundamentally wired, it is the highest way we can offer reverence and love somebody in their humanness. I love that. That says, yes, how do you build connections otherwise? How, yes, do you build connections that aren't at its deepest level a way to honor, have reverence, love that person, and acknowledge they get to be them just as much as you get to be you. I love that. And the only way that works is finding harmony
The harmony. Yeah.
between you.
Such a great word. One of my favorite words, harmony. And I want to highlight some of the things that you said and some of the things we've been talking about, because at the beginning of this podcast, we talked about and we said how relationships are complex. They're challenging, but they're also rewarding and fulfilling, right? And one of the things that a lot of people say, you just alluded to it, why is relationships hard? They don't have to be hard. Relationships are challenging.
Mhm.
Why? Because we're all individuals. We're wired differently. We carry different baggage. They're always going to be challenging. And when we can lean into that and understand that, then it's going to make it easier for us as we go through developing relationships, whether it be a marriage relationship, a father-son, daughter relationship, a business relationship, whatever it is, it's going to be challenging. But you said something key that I think is very important when we talk about relationships, and that is we have to be intentional and we have to pay attention. Always pay attention to every single relationship. And that involves our relationships that we're building as leaders with each person in our organization. And you just mentioned something that's so key, having a plan, having tools and strategies. Because if we just assume that our relationship is going to develop happenstance, that's a big mistake. But if we're intentional and we pay attention and we have strategies and we have plans for developing those relationships as leaders, that makes it easier. But also it creates the connection and relationships that we're talking about.
Well, it does. And there's two things I want to add to that. One is what we focus on, we nurture and we cultivate grows.
Absolutely.
What we don't is still going to grow, but and I like to say it this way, and it's kind of a borrowed lens of when Brene Brown used to say, look, you either do vulnerability intentionally or it's going to do you. I say the same thing about your living legacy.
Yes.
Because a living legacy is not this thing that happens when you leave and it's like, oh, I want to leave people. We create a living legacy every time we interact with someone else. We create in every moment, every breath we take, we're creating that living legacy. We're leaving something.
Right.
And so your living legacy is either doing you or you are doing your living legacy. Right. And I think about one of the greatest examples of this, and he was a genius when it came to visionary technology, the things he created, and he died on his deathbed with a ton of regret because of the way he treated the relationships that mattered most. And if you listen or follow anything about Steve Jobs' story,
yes,
he didn't get a do-over.
No.
And I think about how many times I've seen so many leaders say, well, I'll focus on my kids when I'm like, you won't get the opportunity. You're missing the opportunity for those connections. And so I think about where organizations lose their best people. It's usually a result of lack of leadership, lack of actual culture, and a lack of sense of belonging. And when we talk about a sense of belonging, that being seen and safe and seen, it's a space that says someone is investing in me. Yeah. Someone sees the value I bring, and I'm not just another cog in the wheel or just another number that can be replaced. I think about, back in the days when I was at GE and other companies, rack and stack, burn and churn, wine and china. And it was like, well, if you don't kick it up, then someone else will take, everything was replaceable. And I think about the damage that culture created when people felt like, what's the point? Because I'm just expendable. If you are not nurturing and investing and cultivating the talent within your organization that you recruited, that you spent this money for. And I hear on the other side of it, I don't have time to develop my people. The other side is, oh, but what if they leave and take this? Great, then you raise the whole industry. Stop looking at leadership from a scarcity mentality that says, well, what if they take everything I trained and they go out into what if they do? Then a rising tide lifts all boats and the whole industry gets improved as a result. And great I love when I grow people and they grow out and do something different, right?
Right.
Like there's a whole lens, but it really does start with that ability to connect. And I know I used to get chastised back in my corporate days where they're like, I don't know why your development meetings are so personal. I'm like, because they can't do anything professionally unless we're addressing the person that they are.
Right.
Like they're not interchangeable. It's not this whole notion of work-life balance is such crap. It is your life. Work is one of the spokes on the wheel of your life. And when we need
Yes.
to know who you
Yes.
are
Yes.
as a
Yes. Yes.
person,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
heart, blood,
Yes.
soul, sweat. I'm not saying you bring all your personal baggage in. No, vulnerability has a spectrum and not everybody deserves all of that. But what I am saying is when you start to see the people on your team as actual individuals who I guarantee, even as well as you know the people in your inner circle, there are things people are going through that you have no freaking clue. That when we can extend that level of humanity and
Yes.
empathy and compassion to recognize somebody is always struggling with something. And we can
Always.
show up from a place to hold each other.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's not your culture is not your family, it's not but it's a space where you can show up to do the collective work
Mm-hmm.
that aligns with the mission of the purpose of the organization itself.
Yeah.
And people are able to bring their whole self to that process.
Right.
That's where you build the richness in connections. That's where you build the real relational real estate. That's where you start to build things from a place of real service, real love, and it brings the humanity back.
And I want to touch on something you said. You said it's not your family, but your organization is a family. Think about the dynamics of a family, of how we take care of each other, how we work together for success, moving things forward, creating that connection. So it's a type of family.
See, and I would challenge that one. That
How
one's
so?
where you and I are going to not probably agree.
Okay.
I think it's actually very risky and damaging
Mm-hmm.
to call an organization a family because most of us came from highly dysfunctional spaces. I wouldn't fire my cousins, so to speak.
Okay.
When I need to move a sacred cow, I work with a lot of family organizations.
Yeah. Okay.
The sacred cows are damaging because I can't fire Jimmy Bob, who's the
Right.
second cousin twice removed
Okay.
from.
Okay.
It creates an inability to hold accountability sometimes. So
Okay.
is it a team? Is it a there's a lot of different ways I would personally qualify that, but when I hear people call it stops the real conversations from happening too often. There's a level of protection that comes on.
Okay.
There's a level of missed opportunity and accountability. And I personally, after 20 years in corporate and 13 years doing this, I don't want business to be my family because I don't want them to think that I get to be plugged in 24/7 either. And I don't want to be in a place where it's at the expense of my actual family, that somehow I owe this company a loyalty that says I'm going to there's a whole different dynamic in family. And some of that is because I've done so much work in family systems.
And no, I love that. I love that.
But for me, I would challenge that because
Yeah.
I don't think it's healthy.
Well,
And I don't think it serves when we look at a business as being a family.
right.
Because I think it sets people up to be a martyr.
Right.
And it sets people up to be plugged in 24/7 instead of remembering there's a level of loyalty, there's a level of engagement, there's a level of what you can create in a system. It is a system.
Right.
But my work is not my end all be all. And I don't want to feel like I am obligated.
Right. Yeah.
To be plugged in when it's a job.
And I love that you said that, and I understand why you push back on that, because for not most people, but there's a lot of people, we all have different aspects or different perspectives of family. We come from different types of families. Mm-hmm. So I understand that. And so when I say family, I'm talking about the healthy attitude of how we treat each other, but certainly I get what you're saying. What you're saying when you're talking about calling a company or corporation family. From my perspective, what I'm talking about is a healthy way of looking at people and how we treat them and how we take care of each other.
Yeah. And I call that a conscious culture.
I love that. Okay.
I
love
call that a
Okay.
way to build a conscious culture, and it is a system
Okay.
that allows us a leadership system. It's a model. It's
Conscious
those
culture.
things.
I like that.
But for me, and like I said,
Mhm.
I because of the work that I do, especially as
Yeah.
in this deep work of family systems, relational
Right.
analysis, this whole energetic
Yeah.
dynamic for me, and I used to be someone that was like,
Yeah.
oh, it's like a family. And I'm like, no, it's
Well, I
not.
like the conscious culture.
No, it's
now
not.
that
And
you
so
say
for
that.
me, it's more
Yeah.
around, are we creating conscious cultures and community?
Well, I love that because, like you said, I mean, the connotation of family can mean so many different things to different people. And if you have people in your organization that come from a broken family, then they're going to look at that differently. So I love that you've done the work in that, and then come up with something that's even, I think, more powerful, conscious culture.
Well, and think about it for a minute, because regardless of us talking about, relationships being fundamental, businesses still need to be a business.
Absolutely.
And so there does need to be a level of profitability. There
Yes.
does need to be all these other things happening that if it's a family, I
Mm.
think about people in my family not carrying their weight. I'm not firing, like we don't, again, it creates some shackles and an
Right. Yeah.
anchor that doesn't allow us to do the things that are required to create sustainability, because there are people that at times need to be fired.
Yeah.
There are things that need to change as
Right.
business and the world
Right.
is evolving, that we need to be able
Yeah.
to readjust and pivot. And how that shows up in a family versus how that shows up in an organization are two different things. And so
totally.
again, it's
Yeah.
that, because coming
Yeah.
back to even things we were talking about before, is the intention.
Mhm.
It's the clarity. It's the expectations. It's the also recognizing that family, there is a parent-child dynamic that
Mhm.
happens in family. That is also debilitating and damaging, and it happens in a corporate or an organizational
Yeah.
setting. We are all grown-ass adults showing up to
Yeah.
do a job.
I love that. I love the distinction. I love the distinction that you have so eloquently laid out between family and a team business. I love that. And one of the things you said, I want to kind of dial down on it, is you said, company, we still have to turn a profit.
Mhm.
So here's a question, because I want to make sure that our audience
Mm-hmm.
understands why we're talking about relational leadership. Because one of the things that we talk about is the ROI.
Mhm.
So let's take that full circle and talk about the things that we're talking about today: human design, connection, relationships, and why are they important? Why is all that important to the bottom line of a company?
Yeah. So I would say, first of all, my real ROI is a return on impact,
Mhm.
a return on influence, a return on how we're creating real, meaningful, sustainable change in the world.
Right.
That being said, I also think there's a misnomer, and I know we talked about this on another episode. Too many people, when they define ROI, that
Mhm.
return on investment, it's a money in versus money out game.
Right.
The problem is that's not the ROI. The real ROI that we have opportunity to look at, and it might be something that we want to come back and talk to, especially as we're starting to get a little long here, on a next episode, is return on investment, in my opinion, is a function of time, money, energy, people, resources, culture, and the lifestyle you're creating.
Okay.
It is a more the problem is too often when we have these arbitrary metrics, KPIs and otherwise, they are very two-dimensional, and they don't take into account the people aspect.
Yes.
And so again, money for the sake of money is not a profitable organization. I call profitability a place where people can bring their highest, best gifts to the table in a way that creates impact, that allows there to be a revenue stream, that creates sustainability and creates more opportunity to do more. Because I also believe that, and this is my belief, I believe businesses that turn profits have responsibilities to give back to said community that invests in their services and what
Yeah.
they're offering.
Yes.
And so it becomes then a
Yes.
circle of life in and of itself.
Yeah.
It becomes a very perpetual way that and this is going back to very old historical, the way tribes were created,
Mhm.
which is everybody has a role and the tribe becomes a self-fulfilling, self-sustaining
Yeah.
engine or system
Right.
that feeds itself. And so when we understand that profitability without having a place for that to go, that
Right.
then is a way to give back or a way to be of service. It's why I have moved into a space where I only work with companies that are service focused, impact
Same here.
focused. They are mission driven.
Same here.
I don't give a rat's behind, and you can all hear me say this, I do not give a rat's ass about typical corporate America that just wants their fucking OP and their
Right.
bottom line to grow.
Right.
I do not care.
Yeah.
I do not call me. I do not want to work with your team, because if at the end of the day, all you're trying to do is increase your margins so that top executives can put more in their pocket, but you're not doing something with that,
Right.
peace out. Because no, thank you. No, thank you. That to me is not an ROI. That to me is irresponsible.
It's irresponsible.
An ROI says we are collectively
Mhm.
creating more in terms of more sustainability, more wealth, more change, more impact, more opportunities, more job, more, but more in a way that is that's creating longevity, sustainability, and is looking at again that win-win of what do you need, what do I need, what do we all need. But it takes that whole leadership arc, and I like to say the arc actually has a C squared, because it's alignment, which is the me. Am I leading myself? Me. The relationship, which is, am I leading in my most intimate, closest team relationships, family, home, we. Then there's the us, which is the culture, but then there's there's the me, we, us, and then there's all, the collective.
Yeah.
Because we have a responsibility with where we're at. That is what we're doing, raising the level of consciousness overall. Are we, and I think about the difference. I have no problem with people making wealth. But there's a difference between people that use that wealth to lift and raise others versus those that are just hoarding wealth for the sake of hoarding wealth.
Right. And one of the things that I love you said that, I love that you said that, because that's the responsibility of a leader is to give back, to lift up. Okay. And I love that you said that. And that's such a
reciprocity.
It's a reciprocity. Oh, yes.
Forget
Absolutely.
that, first of all, money wants to be in motion. Money needs a purpose.
Yes.
Money wants to be in flow. And when we recognize that it's not about having more for the sake of more, it's about having more to create access to more, to expand more. But it is a very reciprocity driven energy. And for me, a real ROI is steeped in reciprocity.
See, this is just gold. This is gold. This has been gold nuggets for me. This is why I love doing this podcast with you, Candy, because I always walk away with some nuggets that not make me better as a leader, but also make the people that I work with better as a leader. And I hope that you've gotten some good nuggets out of what we've talked about. If you have questions about anything that we've talked about, please reach out. And understand this, Candy and I, we have a passion for working with leaders. Why? Because we understand the complexity of it, but we also understand the responsibility of it. And we want you to lead with responsibility. We want you to lead with responsibility. And so, Candy, tell us a little bit, just our audience, if they want to learn more about human design and how you work with organizations, how can they reach you and learn more?
Oh, I love that question. I would say probably one of two ways. Go out to my website, candybarone.com, and we can start the conversation there, or find me on LinkedIn, Candy Barone, same thing. It really starts with just having a conversation. I mean, it's kind of, we talk about this a lot, meeting people where they're at and inviting them into the door that makes sense, right? And so I think if you want to start the conversation, comment where we're posting links for the podcast, and reach out, just like with JB with his, Champions Playbook as well. We are a resource. And so if these things are landing with you, if you're like, wow, there's a different way we could approach this, we would love either individually or together to have that conversation with you.
Definitely. Because as Candy said, we're a resource. And we know leadership is challenging and difficult, and you don't have to do it by yourself. So just think of us as a resource that can help you take those steps and make things just a little bit easier on your journey in creating greatness in yourself and in your company. Anything else you want to say before we sign off, Candy?
No, the only thing I would end with is with everything that we're saying. When we talk about relational leadership, I want to just emphasize leadership is a choice.
You heard it. Leadership is a choice. Thank you for tuning in to Safe and Seen.
Thanks, everyone.